Hello and welcome back to our next episode in our factory building series. What we're going to talk about today, I've decided to talk about and actually implement base classes for buildings. Now, we kind of did that with the generator, but I want the generator to again come from a base class. So everything that's buildable comes from a base class. The reason is when we start selecting items we can build, it's easy to find them. It's easy to just say, right, I want this base class, and then from there we can subcategorize. So that's something I want to look at today. I'm not going to go into too much over the top detail, but let's just create a base class. So in our content drawer, blueprints. So no, sorry, that's the first person one. Ignore that one. Ignore that. Our main content, blueprints, and in here we'll create a new folder. So new folder, and we'll call this base classes. Oh no, we can't have spaces. Base classes, and we'll give it a colour. What colour should we have? Let's have a nice colour. Let's see. That's a nice colour. Kind of a turquoisey green, blue. Yeah. So in here, we're going to create a base class blueprint. Okay, so what's this going to entail? So let's create it. So right click or use this add button here and a blueprint class. And it's going to be an actor class. Because we're not making a component, we're not making a character or pawn or scene component. It's going to be an actor. So click on actor. We're going to call this BP underscore. Is that underscore? Yeah. Building base. Okay. Right. Now, in my head, I'm thinking there's going to be different types of buildings. So we can store the type of building in here as well. So before we go into and start editing this, I'm going to create a new enumeration. So if you right click and go to blueprint, come across to enumeration, and this is just going to be the E base build types. If we open that up, and it's gone there for some reason, let's park that there. We're going to add in, I'm going to add in 3. So the first one is going to be static. This building cannot be moved without deconstruction. Okay. The next one is going to be mobile, and this building can be moved using heavy lifting equipment. Okay, so we can actually change that. Mobile non-player. Okay, so basically let me do the last one and we'll do the next one, which would be mobile player. Okay, and this building can be moved by the player in its hands. I was going to say in his hands, but that's not correct, is it? It could be male or female, so let's get that right. So right, you've probably understood most of that from the description. So a static building, once built, this building can't be moved without being deconstructed. Mobile non-player, this building can be moved, but it's got to use heavy lifting equipment. Whether we'll actually use this or not, I don't know, but it's just something in my head. I would like to be able to move buildings around, and I want to do that with some heavy equipment. Okay, so yeah, mobile, non-player, only using heavy lifting equipment. Then we've got mobile player, and this building can be moved by the player in its hands. Now, you might have a different idea of this, so obviously you can go down your own road with this, but I'm not considering even having any type of construction where you can make something at a workbench and then stick it in your inventory. Doesn't work like that, not for me. So as this is a futuristic style thing, what's going to happen is, haven't done it yet, all we've done is manage to place buildings, but that's got to change a bit. I want to be able to place a holographic image as a placeholder, or a holographic object as a placeholder when you lay a building down. My idea is that you have a vehicle that has either a handheld attached gun for smaller objects, where you can, sort of, it kind of fabricates as you go along, a bit like when you use the weld tool in something like Space Engineers, and it builds up, that sort of thing. Or even better is, I would prefer it being done using kind of like a 3D printing type process. So every building has to have has to be built and then moved, because this is going to be on a smaller scale than Satisfactory. It's not going to be like that kind of factory builder. That's what's in my head at the moment anyway. It's going to be more about the industrial side of it, and building a factory on a remote planet, and getting the resources, but having to work to get them, not just flying around, place this, that and the other, and they just appear. No, it's going to be built in a factory. It's going to be built in like a massive 3D printing factory. You then have to either carry it in your hands if you can, or it's going to be moved on a vehicle and placed into place. Now you can put placeholders down with the build tool. That's the idea of the build tool. It will be a placeholder, and that will just assist when you're placing the object. It'll help to have something to snap to. So yeah, so that build tool we made will actually change into more like a hologram, and then we will bring the vehicles out with the with the objects on board, sorry, the buildings on board, and we will place them using those hologram positions. So yeah, that's my idea anyway. This changed obviously since I made the build tool, but the build tool is still going to work, but it's going to be just work in a different way. But we still need it. It's just going to be holographic, and it's just going to be a placeholder for when you place your building base in and help to snap. So sorry about that waffle. Let's get on, and we'll just call this different building types. Okay. So we've got our enum, and we can close that now because we don't need to do anything with that. We may have to add or remove or change some of these, but for now let's close that. I'll leave the generator open. Let's just go back to this, and we're going to open our BP building. Again, it's just sat in the middle. That's all right. I'll park it there. So here we are inside our new base object. So what we're going to need in here now, one thing we know we're going to need is our grid size. That's going to be important, so we know what grid it takes up in the world, and we need to obviously discipline ourselves when making all the objects that go in these, so that they fit to that grid. Just like we had a problem with the generator in the last one, the generator was overhanging slightly. That mustn't happen. So vector 2D. Okay, compile that. We're going to make it visible, and we're going to expose it on spawn, because we might want to set this when we create it. So we'll do that. Okay, we're not going to put any object in. I might not, but no, it doesn't actually need an object, because that's what you're going to add in when you create your child classes. But we do need to know what type of building this is. Now, did we create an enumeration? I can't remember if we did. No. So some of these might change here, but for now I'm going to put this in the base class, this new one. Should I use an enumeration or should I use an interface? because with the interface, I think I might use both, but for now I'm just going to use an enumeration. So come back up to blueprint, enumeration, and we'll say powered type, and I'm going to put E or enum underscore so we know. Go in there, building powered types. Okay, add enumerator, and add enumerator. So none. So building doesn't take power. Powered, building takes power, and supply, building takes gives a power supply. So obviously you won't plug power into a generator. You would take power from it. Building requires no power. There might be other instances, so we could actually change this at any time. Building requires power, and building supplies power. Let's get rid of that capital S. My OCD will kick in. There we go. So now we can tell our building base what type it is. So in here we add in another variable, and it's going to be power, just call it power type, and this will be of type E underscore, and it was it building power base build types? No, it was E. Well, what did I call it? I've just made it and I can't remember. E powered type. Right, okay, let's come back in here. So E underscore power type. There we go. We'll make that visible, and we'll also make it expose and spawn, and we'll set, got to compile to do this, because as you see you can't do anything until you compile it. Compile it, and then we'll set its type to powered by default, because most buildings are going to be powered. So if we set it to default, it just means we just have to go in and edit it later for the ones that aren't. So most buildings will be powered, so just default it as that. Then we also need to add in our other enumerator. So we've got the building type, not typo, and we've got E base build types. There we go, and we'll expose that, expose and spawn, and we'll compile it so that we can change it. Most buildings are going to be static, so I'm going to leave it as static by default. All this can be changed when we create a child class. So there we go. That's a few objects there that we're going to need, and we also need to put these into some sort of grouping so we can see these a little bit easier. So if we take this one for example, we're going to call this config. Now let's get the whole hog configuration, and we'll do that for all these three, because these are all part of the configuration of the building. Okay, so it's configuration information. We can also then hide that to make it neater, easy to get to. So what else do we need in here? Now we're obviously going to need our power port configuration that we use in our generator. That can all start to come in here. So if we come in here, I'm not going to move it yet, but all the config here for creating power and connecting up these ports, so that would be code. So that's this, oh sorry, this create ports. This will then be set up automatically in the base class. So regardless of what type of port it is, so obviously this one we're checking for outputs, but it will actually check each individual port based on its name, or its tag type, sorry. That, and then it will assign whether it's an input and output and anything else we need to do to connect up cables and so forth. So that will be done in the building base, but I'm not going to touch on that yet. Not until we start moving this generator across to it, because that might give us a problem. I'm hoping we don't have to rebuild it, but we can change its parent class. Is it here? Parent class. We can change it. Okay, so we can reparent it, and that's the idea. And then we're going to get errors because we've got a duplicate here of grid size. Well, hopefully that's the only one. Now, if it errors up, all we do is just delete that. We might have to do it before. It might just come up with an error and we have to remove it, then go back in, but that will still be viewable. Okay, so we have our building configuration, so grid size, power type and building type. So what else are we going to need? Let's have a look. So let's add in a building name, and this will be a string. We could use a name. I don't actually think we need to. Now this is going to be the default building name, so we know that's what it's going to be called. So say this, the subclass of this was a refinery, so that's what the building would come through, a refinery. Yeah, we will then allow the player to change the name of the building, but this will still be there as refinery. So let's rename that actually. So we'll call that I hate it when it saves in the middle of your typing. Building type? No, we can't use building type, can we? So yeah, building name. We'll call it the base building name. Right, make that viewable, and we'll make it expose on spawn. Now what we're going to do is put in player building name. Now this is going to be if we want to allow the player to change its name so that they can describe it themselves. So if this is a refinery, this might be sector 14 iron refiner, because we might be able to refine different types of ores and so on. So we can, the player can give it a name so he knows what it is. Now what I'm also considering putting in here, so these are going to be configuration. This one here is going to be editable configuration, I would say. So this one, let's put this in configuration, and we'll leave that one for now. I've got to think of a section name for that, because there's going to be other things that the player can change. There will be a description as well, so let's add in base building description. I don't think this is going to be overridable, but I'm going to change this to text so that it can have probably a bit more in there. I don't know if it's, string might have been enough. We're not going to expose that one on spawn, are we? Nor we are on that one. Yeah, we'll expose that on spawn because it might be needed by the code to actually expose on spawn. So yeah, so that again is in configuration. So let's change that one to configuration. Another thing I'm going to have is grid location. Okay, so this is going to be the first grid that this is placed on. Now I am going to keep it as a vector because there might be height involved where it's placed, and we also need, so this is grid location, so this is going to be the first tile where the object's built. So what I'm going to target is the front left of the object, even if it's 2 tiles wide. The front left grid of the object is going to be its base grid location. so that when it's placed, it can remember where it was on the grid. But yeah, this will, even though I've put in vector, it's not actually going to be positional data. Apart from the height, the height's going to be the only one. It is actually going to be the grid. Now, the grid is basically its location divided by 100, rounded down, and then times by 100, and that'll be its grid location. Yeah, that will be its actual grid. Or we can just divide it by 100, leave it, round it down, and just leave it at that. So if it was at 1250, we round it down. Sorry, we divide by 100, so it's 12.5. Round it down. That will give us 12. So that grid will be 12. But we know that that grid 12 starts at 1200. So yeah, probably just store in there a value. And as it's 3 floats, because we may need the height. The height is the only thing that's not going to be converted to a grid type. It's just going to be an actual height. So we might as well store it within the same variable. So again, is that configuration? Yeah, we'll put it in configuration for now. Yeah, we'll put that in configuration now. Let's make that visible, but do we expose and sport? Well, we'll see. Okay, so we've got a grid location. Does it need anything else? Right now, I don't think of anything else. So that will give us a base building. Let's just save that. And then let's just try, actually, while we're here, if we can change our generator class to be reparented. And I say it might just give us a problem because of this grid size. So we're going to look in here and look for BP underscore building base and compile. Okay, it seems to have changed. In the class defaults, we should see the it's changed the local one to grid size 0. But I wonder if it's done that in the building code. No, it shouldn't have changed it in the building code. I wouldn't have thought so. Let's have a look in our building tool. So, tools, builder, building tool. So there we go, accept grid size. Now that should be now getting its information for, oh, it is, it's changed it to grid 0. Okay, so we would have to relink that. Okay, so this is why we need to have done this so early on, because otherwise we could start messing up all these buildings before we've got chance to use them. So in the generator, I don't think it's renamed anything else. I can't think of anything that would. Those all look okay. The only one I probably will add in is the activated. Again, that would be in the base class, so it has some sort of activation. It's going to be in there. So let's have a look at our class defaults. Configuration, there's our grid size. It's a supply. Building type is, this one's a small one, so we'll say non-player. And the base building name, oh actually no, at the moment we're going to call it static because we don't know whether this is just the base, isn't it? We're actually going to remove most of that code that's in there. We've just made that from the base. Okay, so base building name, power generator, that's all it's going to be as a base name, and that can be changed later on. I won't give it a description yet because this is the base class. Grid location, yeah, that's all there. Brilliant. So here's the default generator settings. and here are the configuration types that have come from our building class, and that's all these. Okay, so we know this is a power supply. In particular, this is a 2x1, just like we had up here. So there we go. The only thing we need to change is this. So let's see where it's used. Find references. Has no references. That's unusual because it's right here. Grid size. Okay, that's a little bit strange. But if that's the only place it's set, then we just pull this out and we get grid size, which will be its base one then, and it shouldn't affect anything. So save that. Generator base. Why is this not showing me where all the references? Find references. Oh, you have to hit that itself. So the only place is in the builder tool under get. Yeah, and there it is. We're using it here. Okay, so we need to replace that one with the new one. So get grid size. Ignore grid 0 because that won't exist. And then we just do the same on this. We will split the struct pin, and we'll take the X into there. Actually, what we could do is hold Control and just drag that up there like so. And this can go, and then this can come down. So there. Perfect. Compile that. That means now if we do another search on our generator grid size 0, find references, hit search, it's no longer used anywhere. So we can actually delete that, and we got no errors because basically we've now changed our building tool to use the new grid size that comes from its base class, and we can see that in our generator base class defaults. Yeah, we've got class settings, which is just all the namespaces and interfaces, blueprint options and default base class, which we've changed here, and class defaults, which will show all of our variables that we've created here in their setups and the base configuration from our building base. So now everything will be created from this. As you can see, it's not changed anything in here. It's still the same building. Yep, it's got all the same information in, and it's just exactly the same. It's just that it starts from this. So now if we want to create a list of objects, then we can now search all the building types that a player can build and assign them to the build tool. And then obviously we can say whether it's locked or unlocked and so forth. So we need some sort of list keeping track and all that. But yeah, we can now easily find all the buildables just by searching for BP building base. So if I want all the generator base objects, so just generators, I can search by this. But if I want everything, including the generators, I'll search by this. I hope that's clear enough for you. Most of you might have known that anyway. But it just helps us find objects. Now, the other thing I want to put into this, into the building base, is another enumeration of types called class, building class. Yeah. So the reason I'm going to put these in is because we want some way of sorting them in a HUD, also in the build tool or in a computer or whatever. So there'll be classes and subclasses. So for instance, a generator will be in the power category, and subclass for a small generator will be small power generators. Then we could have a refinery. Now that would be in a production class building, and then under well, it wouldn't be under anything else, I don't think. But there might be classes and subclasses, and I need to have some way of finding out what they are, so that we can segregate them into a technology tree possibly, and B, just so that we can search by them and we can see them and view them. So if we just wanted to view buildables in a menu, we can go, right, I just want power generating objects, or I just want production based, yeah, and then we could just have subcategories underneath them if needs be. But that might not need subcategories, might just need a base category. So something like production category, service category for buildings that, you know, just service, i.e. like a factory, the one that builds, and then we have player buildings, so habitats type class, then we have power class, things like that, so that we can keep them all sort of separate and in line and in check, so that we can have a technology tree. The technology tree is going to be a little bit way down the road, but we need to think ahead on how we're going to store the information. So I hope that was not too boring, because it was a really basic one. It didn't really give us much at all, but what it does, it sets us up so that we can then do things like HUDs and so forth later on, that will allow us to view building types and so forth. Yeah, and we'll go from there, because, you know, we might be able to load into your gun, right, I want to build a generator. Boom, go into your HUD, choose your generator class, done. Okay, this will be the base of our entire base as such, and everything will derive from this that is buildable. There might be a separate class that we do where they're not player buildable and not interactable and so forth. That might just be a child of this, and it'll just have we might actually just add that into our enumeration here actually. So let's come back to our base classes and building type. So we could just have a non-player one. So if we add that in and just call this non-player, so this will be, this building cannot be built or modified by the player. Oh, wasn't I typing? Oh no. This building cannot be built nor modified by the player. There we go. Oh, and I can't spell. Look at that nice V shot there. Okay, so there we go. Save that off, and let's go to File, Save All, actually, and that means everything will be done. We now have a base class for buildings. It means we can start building different types. Now, as we've got this now, if you want to, you could go ahead and start building your buildings. If you're not sure how to do what you want with them, that's fine, because hopefully that's what we're going to get to in some of the coming episodes. Maybe a production-based building quite soon on, so that we can have a look at how mechanics will work. See, my intention is that if there's, say, a static drill for pulling out ore out of the ground, then the drill can have so there could be different powered types of drills, different sorts, yeah, just like in Satisfactory they have a Mark 1 and Mark 2 and all that, but we can have different way of doing it. I think I'll just have different drills with different names, but they'll have a class. So a class 1 can do between this amount and this amount, and you know, so it could extract X amount of ore per minute. Yeah, and then we can also have drill head types. So we'll have the smaller classes will have a light drill head, but there could be different types. There could just be like a carbon based tip, a carbide even, maybe a diamond based tip. Obviously, you know, more work to actually make, but harder and lasts longer, improves production. There could be all sorts of buffs based on the drill type, the drill bit type, sorry, and the drill type. So, there might be a hardness factor of the ore under the ground, and the lower drill types may get around the outer core, but then they stop at the inner core because it's too hard for them, and then it might need a diamond tip drill, but you might not be able to use that in a smaller static miner. So there's a lot of different things we can do. There's, basically it's whatever your mind can come up with. So this is the point where you've got to think, do you want to carry on watching this and just follow this and make some minor modifications how you want it, or do you just now go off on your own and just use any ideas that I may come up with in this to use alongside what you want, or you just carry on and do what I do? It's up to you. My suggestion would be to possibly if you're carrying on with the course and you want to follow, well, it's not a course, but if you want to follow along with this, I would use my base classes, but then create your own objects and things, but still using the same code that we're building here, and that would probably help you at a later date then, that you could say, right, I want to modify this now. I know enough how to make what I want, so I can modify it to my heart's content now. It's up to you. So anyway, waffled long enough, so this is a little bit boring, but it's an insight now that we've got into our base building, and everything will derive from this that can be built. Well, even ones that don't now, we've just put that in there, haven't we? So from there, we can build things whatever we want, and we can continuously modify the base class to hold all the variables and configurations and code that we need to get these buildings up and running. So yeah, and then we can go from there. I think I might look at, maybe look at ore in the next one. Maybe have a look at ore. I want to have a think about how to create an ore deposit and how to create a miner. One thing I will do though, that I don't like in Satisfactory, and even though it's only minor little gripe, is the ore nodes do not line up with the grid. So even though you can put base tiles down and sit your miner on top of it, the miner won't be centered on the grid position because it's centered and locked to the ore position. I want mine in the grid just to make it look nicer, yeah. Because we may or may not have base tiles sort of thing, platform tiles. I don't know if I want to go that way with this. I'm not sure I want to go over the top with this. I want to try and keep this kind of realistic. But yeah, I've waffled on way too long, but let's just say I'll have a think about how we can make ore deposits, and then how we can attach a basic miner and do a little bit of code in the miner to extract. Yeah, I'll have a good think about that. Hopefully, maybe do that in the next video. So thank you for watching. Sorry it's been a bit boring, but hope to see you in the next one, where we can hopefully move on to something a bit more productive. So let's save all this up, and I will not save us. I will see you hopefully in the next video. So take care and goodbye.